All right. Dong.
That's where I was headed anyway, right? A digital gong.
Oh yeah. Can someone do the gong? You got it, James. Yes. Yes. That's what I'm talking about. Chat. Participants. Anybody have a good joke?
I haven't seen the sample challenge before. It looks good.
What's that?
You haven't seen?
I haven't seen the sample challenge before. It looks good. That's the joke.
You're so quick on your feet.
It's like, but you take it.
How did the hipster burn herself?
How did the hipster burn herself?
Yeah. She drank the coffee before it was cool.
That was my joke 2 weeks ago.
Was it really? Was it? Are you serious? I saw it in a coffee shop yesterday. All right. Enough fooling around. Oh, by the way, here are all the emojis. I'm honestly so proud of this script that I wrote, because so it turns out for Slack, your emojis that you upload have to be under 64K and under 128 pixels by 128 pixels.
Yeah.
So, and a bunch of these are like really big. Like this one is, it's 516K. And some of them are like 2 megabytes because they're like these really, high quality animations. And so I wrote a script that first like downloads all of these, and then it resizes these on the command line, progressively stepping down the resolution until you finally get below 64 kilobits or kilobits. Who says that? Kilobytes. So that it's like the largest possible size that Slack will still take. And I'm just pretty proud of that.
Can we see the code?
Yeah. It's actually on my other computer. I'll
Post it.
I'll post it. I like emo person too.
Oh, nice.
Too cool.
Are you recording this?
Yes, this is being recorded. And I gotta open up a editor.
Where did
So-
you hide the little recording bar?
Was that?
Where'd you hide the little recording bar?
It's on my other screen here. I've got
On
all
his
this.
other computer.
It's on the other computer. Cool. So before we do really anything, let's give some snaps to Miles, who recreated his completed sample challenge repo specifically for the purpose of this interview, and then sent it over. So this is Miles' code. Thank you for that. So let me make sure my database and everything is working. Start.
Oh.
What's that?
I don't believe I updated my schema to represent my users table.
Okay.
Because there was already a vinyl database. So to the schema, before we see that, you got to do that CP environment variable thing before that'll work.
What is the CP environment?
It's CP
Template of
cp.env.template.
Oh yeah, word.
document view. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also to the schema, we got to add a table called users.
Where are we? Data schema. Cool. So let's do this quick.
So create table users should have an ID serial, a name, email, and password that are all just varchar 255.
Name, email.
And password. Yeah.
Cool.
And that's all I had as far as the checks. I didn't do any type of email sanitization check in this case.
Okay.
Somebody call it? Is there for create users?
If you have something else after that that's necessary, if that's where you're ending your file, it won't break anything.
Oh, that's
It's
where it
best to put it there. Yeah.
All right. I didn't know
Simple.
So yarn run db schema.
Seed.
Is it drop table if it's
Yeah.
albums semicolons? I'm totally out of the habit. Table if exists users. Seed. Okay, so thanks for that. Oh, yeah, this is final. Got users, good. Cool, and so let's make sure this runs. Start. Cool. So we've got this, and we've got an albums page, Malibu. Great. So folks seem to find it quite useful on Monday to just live code our way through this, and so I think we should do that again. And just the caveat again that this context is not the context in which we will change the nature of the apprenticeship interview. I know that there are concerns about that. I actually know that many of those concerns have been or are being addressed in terms of amount of time and complexity of the challenge and all of that, so that it's calibrated so that people are, passing it if they are ready to pass into the phase. So just that caveat that absolutely fine for you to have critiques of that, and this is not the place to work them out. Cool. So last time we did one of the specs that's in the actual sample challenge. This time I wanted to make up a spec, and I'm going to paste it in the README here, and then solicit volunteers. So before I even do the spec, before I even paste that in here, who would like to volunteer for live coding? Who'd like to volunteer to code? Fode. Who else?
It might be redundant, but sure.
Okay, Miles throwing his name on the stack. Anybody else?
We need someone. Awesomeness.
All right, we got 3. So here is the spec. So sign up and sign in have been taken care of. Testing is actually taken care of, right, Miles? Profile has not been completed. And so the new spec that we're adding is like button.
Ooh. I like it.
So, is everybody still breathing? Okay, so the specs, and I don't make any claim that these are like perfect, so we may have to edit these as we go. But the specs are: a user can click a like button on an album, and it doesn't have to be any fancy button, increasing the total likes displayed without a page refresh. Without a page refresh. The number of likes persists between page refreshes and server restarts, so meaning there's some backend persistence of that data. Users are only able to like an album when logged in. Each album correctly displays the total number of likes from all users, and users can only like an album once. So meaning likes are tracked by users. And finally, if a user has liked the album that they are viewing, a red border is displayed around the like button, meaning that you can't re-like it. It's like, that's just our particular sign that you've already liked it.
If there's no take backs, you can't unlike.
Yeah, if you already like it.
I would totally support you to implement that, and
Okay,
for now, we'll see. If Jen gets up here and bangs it out in 5 minutes, then we'll add. Yeah.
You just 3 minutes.
Whoa. Whoa, you just. So clear specs.
Yeah, let's go.
Sure.
And this as far as I know, is not currently in the challenges, but very well could be. So this is an example of the kind of thing that you might be asked to do. And so again, the things that I'm going to be commenting on and coaching people on are two things that I've really noticed, I think, are like the biggest learning edges for people in this phase in general are a problem-solving approach in general, like a kind of strategy for attacking a problem, and then also specifically your debugging approach. Because I have noticed some folks, and it's not any particular person, but just folks in general, you'll hit a bug and then get stuck by it. And getting stuck by a bug is not, that's, by the time you get into apprenticeship, there should be very few bugs where you just get stuck. There should always be something where you're able to reason out what's going on and take a next step, even if you don't know exactly how to solve it right away. So that's what I'll be commenting on too. And so like last time, I'm going to encourage whoever comes up first, which Jen is first on my list, even though she said she wanted to go second. And I'm going to encourage the first person up to take the specs and turn it into a task list, an action list for yourself, meaning given these specs, I know I need to do this to the schema. I know I need to update this file. I know I need to whatever, so that you're putting in that brain energy first and then not having to keep rethinking about that every time you come back to it. You willing to go first? Yeah. All right.
Got this, Jen.
So the floor is yours.
Okay. And just go?
Yeah.
Smells good?
Yeah.
Smells good? Okay.
And feel free to phone a friend, ask your buddies for some support on this one.
Miles, do you want to join me up here?
Sure. I was going to say, like, just to kind of explain, well,
I'm just going to phone
as far as
teleport.
what's happened already. Are we trying to actually finish the profile and then do the albums, or
Just
separate areas?
just the like button.
Cool. So yeah, I guess if we're developing a list of to-dos, we can check and see what the albums page has currently. I think we looked at it, but just to like reiterate. So we put in this like button on the individual album page, or like the group album page that you first landed on.
Good clarification. On the individual album page.
Okay.
And another approach that I'm gonna really encourage you to use today and in general. Start from the data and move forward. So for me, as soon as I was thinking about like, okay, we're going to do this today. Do I actually know how to do this? Yes, okay, I do know how to do this. I was thinking, okay, what's the schema? Because we've got some data involved in this, and understanding how we're modeling the data is going to give some form and shape to the database queries we write and the routes that we write and all of that. So why don't you guys talk about the schema representation, start there, and what actually needs to happen with that.
So what are our constraints of these specs? A user can only like a given album one time. So we need some way of tracking likes based on user and album, and also making sure that that link can only happen one time. Sounds like a joint table. If anybody else has any other suggestions.
What's the schema look like right now?
It's gonna be empty. Oh, okay. That's fine. Sorry about that.
No, that's received data.
Just right below that.
Just below
Oh.
that.
So we have albums and users table.
Yeah.
So albums and users both have IDs.
So are you thinking of like a joint table that's a like table?
Yeah, like users, likes, or
User like table.
yes.
What's the relationship between users and likes?
One to many. One user can like many albums, but
Anybody
only
disagree?
Right.
an album can only, oh wait, no, many to many.
Many to
Because
many.
there can be many users liking the same album.
So the fact that it's many to many, what does that tell you about what you need to do to implement it?
Joint table.
Joint table.
So. So.
How do you represent a foreign key
Reference,
reference?
integer reference. Wait, so
References. I guess you define the variable, which you want to call the column, and the type. And then instead of like not null, you would say like references the table dot the column on that other table. Like so.
Cool.
Oh. Use maybe. Wait, is this
Yeah.
supposed to be a like table?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is your comment?
I was thinking
On the naming,
the naming. So would this be like 18, like user like
Album likes.
album likes?
I like the idea of having both names in there, but adding something that speaks specifically for likes would probably be a good idea. Just in case at some point when we turn to Spotify and wanted to save that, a user has referenced this album on a playlist or something like that, just super clear. So like user
user
album likes, yeah,
Well, we already know that the users are the ones that are gonna like the album.
right.
So it's kind of unnecessary to add that. Like just doing album likes, that's what the purpose of the table is.
Right.
And like we know that it's gonna have to have a user ID. Because the album can't like itself.
I totally agree with you.
Album I like myself.
I've not run into situations yet, but I've run into situations where I can see that being a problem where it's like, wait a second, what are these 16 tables that I've now created to store all these very specific connections of data, and having it like super explicit just helps down the road.
I feel like that's just like when that time comes, then you refactor your database so that, because like right now we don't have that information and it's not in specs. So planning for something that may never happen,
Right.
I feel like we should just work with what we have.
And all good points. And in the context of an interview, pick a name and go. Just pick a name. if I were coding this, I would I like the idea of like users album likes or user album likes, just because it makes it clear that it's both a join table and that the purpose of it is to
So it's users.
track likes.
Parentheses ID. Remember, it makes sense to have a like ID as well.
I think it would.
What is?
In a join table, you would have your, let's see, if you had other data in that join table,
Yeah.
so if there were other things about the like for example, what if it was instead of a like, it could be a like or a smiley face or a heart or a laughing or crying or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you would have an ID and then some other data that you're tracking in there.
Like a timestamp potentially as well, right?
Sure.
Wait.
And folks see what Jen is looking up right now? Who knows off the top of their head what needs to happen with cascading?
Is it maybe just not with the S? I see
Oh,
cascade.
yeah. I think you are right.
So it doesn't like references.
I think it's.
Integer reference.
Yeah, it has to have a, there's no data type in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Integer reference. And it's reference, not references.
Just references.
It is?
Yeah.
Who pointed out that it's a data lacking the data type? John. So what did you notice that had you see that?
Well, I was kind of looking at the error, and then it had the little caret that says references. I'm like, oh, it needs to be integer references.
Bingo. So these are two spots where I could imagine a learner getting stuck on this and spending, instead of like 20 seconds or 40 seconds or whatever, spending like 4 or 5 minutes being like, wait a minute, what the heck? And so going back to the terminal here, so the first error, this one, if I saw something like this with pointing to that cascades, my immediate thought would be, did I spell that wrong? Is that because it's saying right here there's something funky. So I would immediately go to that question of like, did I spell it right? And then here it's another good thing to be like, okay, so we're getting a problem right here. Is it with references? No, references is spelled right. And then you kind of think, okay, what is special about here? Oh, data type. And then you can get it and move on. So in general, take the information that's being given to you about the error and pick it apart for every useful thing you can get out of it.
Yes.
So I thought Serial handled that, but you might have to throw a unique after Serial on 6 and 12.
Do we have to use primary key?
Yeah, that's what
I thought Serial handled that as well, but none of that seems to be the case currently. Primary key should handle uniqueness as well, but it'll probably complain about users. Yeah.
okay.
Hey.
Cool.
Just,
Cool.
And then refresh if you want to.
Yay, we did it. Okay.
So a little bit of feedback here. If it is your style, if you just find that you truly work best by taking a thing and like diving right into it and coding it, get down with your bad self. For me, there's just so much that I gain from before I write a line of code, like banging out these to-do lists, that I would be disciplined about that for myself. Like make sure I get through all of those before I actually code something. So nothing wrong with what Jen did, but I would encourage most folks to do the task list first and complete it. So what's missing from the task list?
A route.
Route.
The JavaScript that add or subtract likes.
Okay. And oftentimes here, it's good to be very specific about what you need to edit. So if you don't know the exact file, how would you say it, Hannah, if you were being very specific about where that edit is going to happen?
I guess if it's the like is getting stored in the database, then I'm trying to think if it would how it would be added or subtracted based on the user.
So this adding or subtracting a like when you click the button, who can identify where or what you're editing to make that happen?
So you would need to, whatever the front end JavaScript file is in public, that would need to be edited probably with a fetch call because it's no paid refresh.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd also need a query. So the actions, the JavaScript, I guess, maybe in users.js and actions would have to be modified in the query. And then you would also need to have a link to that query in the route.
Mm-hmm.
Would you need two queries? One to check to see if it's already been liked, and then one to actually add a like.
Good. And one thing and this is for everyone because I've noticed this being a potential weakness too, be very clear about what I was just asking about. So is this client-side JavaScript? Is it server-side JavaScript? That's like understanding that whether it's one or the other is one of the most important things and one of the places that I see people getting tripped up a little bit. So specifying that there's some browser JS, some client-side JS that's going to make a fetch call, and that's going to update and actually it's not in the spec. So, well, actually it is in the spec that it displays the total.
Yeah.
So it's got to make a fetch call and it's got to update the DOM, do some DOM manipulation.
So how are we counting likes right now? Is it in the database? Is it the album ID and then there's a column that just adds a like number, or does it add a list of users who like that album and then it just counts that and returns the total?
Yeah, for the folks that helped write the schema, what's the answer?
Because right now it's just it seems like there's a column for user ID and a column for album ID and I think a column for likes, right?
I don't think there is. It's just
You'll
ID.
count the number of albums that are in that like table, and that will say how many
Okay.
times it's been liked.
So there's nothing there. So there's nothing actually
Then for
countable.
I
Technically, some of them.
No, but every time you insert into, all you have to do is get it.
so it's a new row per like.
Yeah.
And then it deletes it if you're on.
So you could select all where album ID equals
Yeah.
this, and then get the length of that array.
Good.
That will tell you the number of likes.
Yep. So how complete is this task list? Is there anything, as you look at the specs, is there anything that's missing?
Do we have to store whether the person is logged in or not?
Yes.
So that means we need session.
Well, that's the authenticate.
Like,
Is
there's
that-
no session in
There's no
in-
session in it.
Yeah, so you the spec for that part.
So we're gonna have to create a session to store whether that person is logged in or not, because then that will give them permission
Right.
to.
Additionally, when we are checking to see how many likes the album has, we also have to identify if one of those likes came from the user, so that we can turn off their ability to like it again by putting a red border around the button for the spec.
Is session set up already?
No.
How did we do login and log out?
We allowed them to sign up and then redirected them to a page, but if they refresh.
So they're not really logged in.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's according to the spec. They are allowed to sign up, and when they do so, they are redirected to a page.
Yeah.
That is all.
Okay.
I was going off of Justin's like, just do what they tell you to do, and not like, well, I could also use this in the
Yeah.
future if we added this feature, which we weren't being asked to do at that point. Yeah.
Yep. So on that last one, if the users liked the album they are viewing, red border is displayed around the like button. Talk to me about browser.js, server rendering, database schema. Where in the stack are we going to implement that, and how? These are good design decisions to be clear about before you move forward and try to start coding it.
What's the question again?
Yeah, so the question is, last spec, if users liked an album they are viewing, a red border is displayed around the like button. How are we going to implement that, being specific about whether we're editing, browser.js or, this EJS server rendered page, or, the route, or, what are we editing?
You could check the database if the user ID is in that table at all, then it should have a red border, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't have a row.
Check the database for the presence of the user ID.
In there at any point.
That's part of the query, like part of the query.
Yeah,
action.
and if it exists, then red border. If it doesn't exist, then no border.
Mhm.
And you have to make sure that you can't repeat a user ID in the table, so you don't have two.
So can we do that in the query though, or in the schema? Can we just say that?
Unique
Yeah.
rondo or no.
So that would mean that a user can only like one album.
Yeah, so that's.
Oh, that's right.
There's no way to do in a schema like
So we can do a
these
query.
two can't repeat.
Yeah, you might be able to. We could definitely do a query
The
To
query
tell
that
the table,
calls
like,
it
don't
and
allow
says-
this row to repeat itself.
if
That's what
like
we'd be doing.
looks for current album ID and user ID.
How to delete duplicate, you don't want to delete, you want to detect before.
I'm gonna do it on the server side, just to get
Yeah.
it working. and
Oh,
then-
yeah, definitely.
Well,
I guess my general would be to check and see that it's in there first. But I don't know if there's a way to do that at the schema level to tell it, don't allow duplicate row.
Mhm.
That seems pretty, like for what we're looking at is just 2 columns, so it seems pretty straightforward. But it seems pretty crazy to tell Postgres to just handle that if anything if any of these rows all of a sudden become the same, do something, because they have to check the entire database anytime you do anything to it, which doesn't seem.
Maybe we should have
Like
an
a
ID
tradition
for that album likes table.
So this is a place I'd encourage you to not get stuck. Think of the easiest
Just solve
solution,
it, like-
the easiest solution that's going to work,
Right.
and do it, and worry about deepening your understanding of Postgres at a different
Right,
time.
yeah, so before we add it in there, check and see if it already is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do it on the server
That's a
side.
simple way to do it.
So when you say like the JavaScript from the front to the back, you're saying like where is it going to start, what is it going to do, and how is it going to represent itself when it comes back out?
Yeah, because when I think about this last one, there's the case where if the user likes the thing in that moment, we can just update the, we can do a DOM manipulation and update the button there. If you've rendered the page and the user has liked it at some point in the past, you're going to have to pass that somehow in the EJS data that you're passing through. And so what I'm wanting you to be attentive to is the difference, like the difference between those things. It's like, okay, I'm going to have to do this on the browser side. Also on the server side, I'm going to have to send along a flag that's like, has the user already liked this thing?
It seems like it would be a different option. I would say simpler, but to have a raw button that once it's rendered calls back to the server and says, what should I be doing right now? So that your EJS, the template that you send out is the same for everybody, regardless of whether they're logged in or not. But you have a fetch that takes the cookie that's on the client side and sends it back and says, I'm user 5, and I want to know what I should be doing on this button. I'm thinking in React. I want to know what I should be doing on this button. You could say, all right, user 5 has already liked it, and there are 15 likes for the album on the page you're representing.
If I understand you correctly, I think GAT's solution is going to be more complicated and more costly than it needs to be, because you're sending out a page that's then making a request back to the server for something that it could have known at render time.
Right.
And so the way to do it that would be the most optimal in my mind is at render time, either put something in the EJS template itself that's like, if this thing, then display the button this way, or it would be that, and you're passing some data that's like, have I already liked this album?
I guess I understand for like overall optimization for a time constraint thing like this, and we already have to figure out how to make a page realize when it's being reread or when they refresh how to do a thing. Shouldn't we just handle it that one time and then go forward instead of figuring out how to modify a template as well as how to modify the JavaScript to work with it?
I'd be interested to see your solution on this, but I do think the thing that's going to be most useful here is to just do this in an EJS.
Okay.
So I would encourage you to go that way.
Okay.
Cool. How are you feeling, Jen?
Good. I got a solid 40 minutes of standing in front of people. Next person.
Sure.
Okay.
You can.
We'll work with you. We'll do it together.
Let's find out what's going on. What do we got to do here?
So where do we leave off? Jen?
It's down.
Yeah, down.
Yeah, let me pull that screen back down. You're going to want to just work on this upper screen.
Which screen?
Nice job.
Oh, this one?
Thank you.
And what about
this one?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
All right. And
It's not easy going up.
it's not easy following Jen.
I don't know if I agree with that, but
So focus right now on being very directed with what you do.
Okay.
It's like, what have I done already? What's the most important next thing to do?
The queries.
Database queries?
Yeah.
Okay. You down for that, Footer?
Yeah. Which query?
So on line 76 and 77. Two queries.
Query to see if liked, query to create.
Okay, query to see if like and query to create like.
Let's do create first.
Okay, so I guess actions.
Yeah.
That's where we at. And we're going to we querying. Sorry, man, I kind of lost what. So we're querying what? We're querying.
We're querying to like an album.
We don't have any action set up for that currently.
So you're gonna have to create a new file.
And if you would like to tap out and have somebody else do this, and then you can come back in.
Oh, no.
Do that.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
All right.
I'm down for the challenge.
All right.
So we got to create a file here or something?
Yes.
So here's a
Oh,
here's another suggestion.
Mhm.
If it seems clear that like file structure is not going to matter. Like in this case, there's nothing that says your file structure is perfect and your file naming is great and all of that. I would just go to the index.js file, take a file that's already existing and just throw these suckers in there. Worry about breaking it out if you're actually building a real app.
You said it one more time?
So I'd go into the index.js and it's just exporting a bunch of these things. So I would either just add it here or I'd add it to one of the other files. Just write your database queries in an existing file rather than adding a new file, exporting from that file, importing here.
Dude, that's gonna be ugly.
You're right. Add a second to make a new file and be like, wait, where did I stick that? Oh, in the Git album.
I hate.
I mean, it's ugly and it's simple. And
Can
we just follow the structure of how it is?
Right.
Like,
Just copy one of the sign-in file.
Yeah.
Duplicate that and call that.
This one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, actually go into the file, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this one we're gonna call it. What is it again?
Maybe add like.
Add like. Add like. Okay.
Add like.
That's gonna be.
Capital L.
Capital. Oh yeah.
And then on the left-hand side, select any of those that's not indexed and duplicated. Yeah.
Any of those that's not.
On the get one of these and duplicate it.
Oh yeah. Is it one of these in it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And rename it to add like that file. If you right-click on it.
Duplicate.
And then you can change the name to add like. Capital L. Yeah.
Okay.
And then change the name of the function in that file, in the add like file.
Okay, I like files. So, man, the keyboard is kind of funky. Yeah. So this one we're gonna have add likes.
Singular. Add like.
Add like and return all from.
So we want to insert into.
Okay, so this one we're gonna add likes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna insert into albums.
It's a table called album
likes. You can check it with your schema. Just click on schema tab.
This might be a good time to take the schema up top on the tabs.
And put it on the tabs. Where is it at? This one, right?
Yep.
This one, right? Okay, so let me go back to add likes and let's go to schema and open it to the right. Split right. What happened to?
That's interesting.
Yeah, click that and now
just drag it over to the right. There you go.
What is happening?
There you go.
So insert into
Do you know what you just did to my editor?
We're going into album likes.
It has to be the same.
On line 18.
Album likes here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is capital A?
Yeah.
And likes?
Without the S in between the two words.
Album singular.
Okay. So we're gonna import, we're gonna insert, what is this one?
User
Take a
ID.
user ID and an album ID.
User ID?
Yeah.
Albums ID. Okay, and the values. What do we have values?
$1.
Okay, values $1, $2. That's it.
Yeah. And
Okay.
are we putting anything into that function?
Into the function? It needs to take the ID and the album ID, the user ID and the album ID.
And the trailing comment ID.
You said the function takes a user ID? Takes the ID and something else?
User ID and an album ID so that we can pass that into the
Man, what's up with your keyboard, man? ID and
User ID, album ID.
User ID and album ID.
okay, and so this one takes user ID and album ID. Man, I don't know how to use your.
I don't think there's anything special about it. The only thing is the caps lock key is control. But
You've got
Oh, that's what it is?
You got an extra comma after the dollar sign too.
The other side, yeah. Okay.
And then maybe a returning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that?
Returning stock.
Inside of the.
Yeah. So here we have user ID
Yeah.
and album ID. Okay, and then here we're going to return all, right? Or return?
Returning.
So
Returning?
let's undo a little bit. Sorry.
Returning star.
And then, parentheses.
No. Parentheses, a closing parentheses just before the returning.
Let me close this, man. Let's do this. Okay, so we got incidental albums, album likes, user ID, album ID values. We're going to replace 1 and 2
With a.
and close this here, and then returning all, and then close this, comma.
Yeah.
Okay.
We want it on at the beginning of the line. We want db.1 instead of db.a.
Oh yeah. Should I, or none, or just one?
why db.1?
It'll error out if it doesn't create that table and return it to us, or create that entry and return it to us.
But if we do db.1 and then we don't want them, then we can, if we don't get anything back, we can use it as an error.
But did you hear what they were saying about 1 or none?
What was that?
Did you hear what they were saying about?
Yes.
DB1
So
or
one of
none?
them returns an error, or the other one, db.1.
So listen to Jen say.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Why db.1?
so db.1 expects exactly one
Yes.
to be returned to us.
Uh-huh.
And then we'll error out if we either don't get one or get too many.
Okay.
And then 1 or none if it's not able to complete that operation of creating that row, it won't error out.
And why is it advantageous for it to error out?
Because we want to know.
Because we can handle whatever reason it's erroring out.
Yep. Makes it very easy to clearly delimiting between the success case and the error cases. So db.1 is a good one.
Is the one, right? Okay. Should we try this out, or do we need to try this out or no?
Yeah. So this is a case where I would say be confident enough in your SQL to not need to try this out.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right. So we got a function I'd like, and it should be right. Okay. So next step, where's the specs again? Is it readme?
You gotta have lowercase the d.
Okay.
What did you say? Speak louder.
What is that?
You need to type out.
Where?
In the last line, album ID, the d should be lowercase.
All right.
And this is one thing I'd say. I'm glad you caught that. Just if you find that you make typos like this, do whatever you need to do to stop doing that. Like really, because it just adds time when you make a small typo like that. You run your code, it's not working, and then you have to debug where it is. Versus if you're being meticulous about when you're writing it, if you find that you do this, write the variable, check that it's the same. Check the linter. The linter was giving a linting error too. So do whatever you need to do to be sure that you're being absolutely as precise when you're coding as possible, and it'll save you some headache.
Yeah, so where we
All right.
place that.
So let's go.
Routes.
What is it? Routes?
Yeah. the only part-
Okay, let's go to where your routes at, man.
Redirect.
So under, I guess we want to do it under. Wait.
That makes sense. We haven't discussed that, but
What's the albums? What do you guys think?
I can't even see what we have.
What routes do you think?
Yeah.
So we're adding likes to albums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You don't
I'm
need
right.
like a joint route. I think it would make sense to put it off of albums as well. I would agree with that.
And so this is again another time to just be like super decisive and just pick something.
So we need to import it.
Okay, so we need to import.
But it's not gonna come from the actions file, so it's gonna.
It is.
It is coming from action file,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry, my bad.
Add likes or like.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the end, trim, comma, that's,
Is there a turning comma here?
Yeah.
Yes. ES6, or depending on the linter, but this linter likes that.
Okay.
because it's not used anywhere.
Oh, right.
All right. So on this one, we're doing
Yeah.
we're adding a like. We basically
Yeah. So it's gonna, what is it gonna be?
It's
One
the
request.
insert
Album ID you could get.
no, we're getting what? No, we actually we are not getting it, right. We're posting to that right.
Posting or we're putting
Okay. So we have so this one.
pot, rather dot pot.
You got this.
Close.
And I got all right, of course. All right, so we need and the route will go to I guess album. Huh? Is it going to album?
Just to get it done and to do it, since we're already. Oh, everyone's looking at me. Hello. Just like online, so we can just do a post to album ID, since that's the only way we're interact with the albums right now.
Would you also have to do like album ID / user ID?
The user ID will be aware of the user ID because of if we had sessions set up and we know based on whose session information is passed down to us who's clicking the button. We don't have that set up yet. Furthermore,
What? You don't get that? Oh,
I
man,
feel
this
like
is-
posts to album ID could. We're not adding
Oh, it's
additional
awful.
features.
I agree.
Right? But it seems extremely. I would think that if I'm posting an album ID, I'm saying I want to create an album with this ID, as opposed to liking it. That's
We could,
So what do you propose, Miles?
maybe like / album ID.
Perfect. Let's go with it.
Is-
I like it.
Wait.
We wanted to
Wait.
just add
wait.
refresh the
Page.
It's not gonna be, this is just the code that you're gonna make to the database.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So this is one case where I think people are getting a little bit mixed up because we are now creating an API where there has not been really an API. Most if not all of the routes or everything except authentication has been to serve up browser pages to the user. Now we're creating a route that we're going to interface with programmatically, and it's totally fine to put that in this file or that file or wherever, as long as you are clear this is a different kind of thing. And if you find that you're not super clear about that, what I would do is actually create a new file here that's API.js and make it /API/ likes /album ID or something like that, and just pick something. And again, for a test like this, it's not going to make a big deal as long as you know it works. But just make sure, in general, like for all the coding that you're doing, that you're clear when you're working with an API versus working with like I'm serving pages to the user.
Because of this file structure, then you're gonna have to do stuff to the index and make sure that it goes to a specific API page as well.
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna be-
So if I were wanting to get this done real quickly, I would probably actually just do it in the index file. Do a dot, whatever. I don't actually know what the file looks like, but just define that /API/ whatever.
So you say just go to the routes and actually update the index file on the routes?
Just do it where you want.
Yeah, I was gonna say what feels most comfortable for you at this point.
No, but I missed what actually.
Yeah. So what I would do here is, because we're going to do just I think 2 routes, I would do routes. What is this called? Routes. Routes. Did you make this,
I did not.
Miles?
No.
It should be called router.
Yeah, but it's actually part of the specs.
Who wrote these specs? Seriously. And then so I do slash API slash likes slash album ID, and then I'd write the route here, and I'd do another one for whatever the other route is.
It would be a get or post, right? As opposed to use, because we're not passing a full router to it,
Okay, so a get here.
or whichever.
And then so are we working on the post first?
I was gonna say, do we want it to be a
Why is it again now? You said again?
Well, it's a post. The 914 should be routes, not post, right?
I
If we're
think
working
that's
on
what we agreed on.
We're working on that.
So Stephanie, say it super decisively. Do this right
On
now.
line 14, routes.post instead of routes.get, because we're working on creating a post alike right now.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then here, do I need
Request response.
Yep.
work and res and next maybe? Actually, two. And this is it?
To start. So now we have to actually define what we want to do with it. The problem is that all of our actions are not in here, so I got to bring those in to the index. So if you want to go back to the albums page, it's at the top.
Back to albums?
Sure.
Mhm.
Line whatever through 7 is importing all the actions into that. We need to copy 3 through 7.
So all these ones, get album ID, all this stuff, right?
Take it over the index.
Okay. Take it over the,
It's at the top.
where is it?
At the
Up at
very
the
top.
top.
Oh, yeah.
Above Express.
Index here, and put it somewhere.
On line 6, no?
Sure.
Actually, can put it 6.
And then you don't need 7 or 8.
7 or 8 for get album ID.
Correct. So now we have add like available to us.
Okay. Actions, so we delete this one.
I so appreciate that you're doing this and never do that in an
Oh
interview.
man,
just don't bother taking
it's
the time.
it's OCD, it's OCD, man. All right, so we got import add like, so we have it now available here. All right. So what we want to do is have add like, and we passing it.
Those helpers down there.
Yeah, is it
So we want to pass it a user ID and album ID. We don't yet know the user ID.
ID,
We
yeah.
haven't set up any way to identify who's talking to us, but the album ID is the request.parameters.
yes? I mean, actually, let's
Just pass
just
it like one for now, just to have like the user. Just because we're not gonna have time, I think, to.
If we're going with the suggestions that Justin makes as far as like not spending a lot of time testing it, like just getting it to a point where it should work, then I think that sticking in a 1 would be something we have to go back and remember where did we stick in our coded data that we have to go and adjust, versus powering through to the point of actually getting the user delivered there and knowing that when we finally do deliver to a user to this route, it already knows how to handle that and push it on through to the database.
sorry. What do you say?
But I was answering his question. But yes, normally I would stick a 1 there and then just like, yeah, let's see if this works. Right. But
The
yeah.
request is misspelled on line 15.
Yeah.
9:15.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And do you want to do bracket notation on album ID and take it off the end of the request frame?
bracket what?
To destructure it.
Destructure.
Oh, you mean album ID?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
And then take it off the end of the request frame.
and then unfortunately we need to change the
Place for a bug that might drive you crazy.
Yeah.
What's going to happen if we do this?
Then line 14 has to be a lowercase d.
Yes. Yep. So when you're destructuring, your variable name is going to be whatever it's trying to pull off, and if there's a mismatch in the case.
Okay, but do you have to like actually just try to be for the sake of consistency? Always look maybe put ID in caps or something.
Say it again.
So far, it's always been lowercase d.
Lowercase.
Like up until this point, all of your the function you created.
Sure. Actually,
just to keep it consistent.
all right.
Yeah.
So let's do it like this. Okay.
Cool. So it's noon. Time to wrap up. So a couple things. In general, and I'm not picking on you, Fode, but if you notice that you're doing this kind of thing where you're writing something, but then going back and like refactoring it right away, like changing a variable name to this, and then maybe you're writing a little bit more and changing another thing from that to that, find some way to kick that habit so that, by the time that you leave this phase, you should be able to write a route like this, basically start to finish without much jumping around. Maybe you need to go reference something, but you should be comfortable enough with it that you can write the route, write the callback function. You can know that you're going to make this database query, so you write the database query, you put in some variables, then, like that you're just doing it so that you're not having to do a lot of jumping around. Does that make sense?
It's harder with like pair coding or whatever. Everybody has their different opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things about this particular context that make this unique. This is good.
Good job for them.
Yeah, great job.
Hey, sorry, man. I couldn't really be on this.
No, you're doing great. Any other? I mean, it's interesting. This is more complex than I was thinking, like by, 1 or 2 steps, because you're right, like on the page, we do have to track the album ID and then pass that through the fetch and all of that. So that's going to add a couple more things to our to-do list. But yeah, you guys have done a really good job on this collectively and individually. What I'll do is I'll actually post this repo, and I'd encourage you, if you're at this place where you're wanting to test, work on this, because you maybe have worked on the sample challenge already and you got it working and whatever. So take this and bring this to completion, and notice in particular, what are my slow points or stopping points? Again, not because I need to be like the world's most efficient coder, but because those give you a good idea of where I need to sharpen my skill around something. So notice, where am I getting stuck? Where am I finding I don't know what to do next? And what are the things that I can do to help myself keep moving? I think the last thing that I'd like us to do before we wrap, and if anybody wants to go to lunch, you can do that. Go back to the README. And because we're stopping like mid-file, put something in here, and you can get help from your buddies about how to pick this up. Like, give yourself something so that if you came back to this 6 hours from now or 2 days from now, you would remember, oh shoot, I was in the middle of writing this function.
I would do line 7, 9.5. I would put in parentheses like, this is where I stopped.
So put that in the actual file?
Yeah.
Yep.
79.5.
What is that? No, I was just trying to figure out what the hell is so 79.5.
I know exactly what it means.
Yeah. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and I would specify the route. So in the middle of adding a like route.
And I would specify which file I put it in, because I might not remember.
Good. Yep. Good. And so what's the file? It's
it was on the routes index.js. I think it was.
Indies.
And
Yeah.
we haven't what?
We haven't done a server-side JS too.
Or the query
Or
to see for like.
Yeah.
So I would also go through. So we did this one, schema representation of alike, right? We did. What's that?
Why'd you make that checkpoint?
Option V.
Okay.
Database queries to interact with likes. Did we do one of these? I think?
We did do create.
I tried to paste something one time and it gave me a check mark, and I was like, What?
Server-side JS, no. Route for handling like creation.
We're in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yep. So, and then just to make it really clear to myself, I put in something like that, like, hey, attention, this is, yeah, like da 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 da. And then who was it that was saying? Stephanie, were you saying in here? Actually, say like to do. Finish this call to add like and the dot then handlers or something like that. And then, I might even say too, just to give myself a little bit extra context, to do write the route that handles, and what is get likes. Yep. So this should be, is this enough for folks to pick this up on your own? Has this been useful? What's
So can we like just? Oh, I guess we're doing it tomorrow. So talking about what we have to do from here. So we have albums being rendered already, but now we have to modify albums, the template that's being rendered, to also make a database call to check and see what should be rendered.
Yeah.
And modify the template.
We have a lot
And then
to do.
add some JS. Okay.
Yep. And what you're saying, Miles, is great. And so for myself, writing a to-do list like this, I would be that specific. So I would say, because I know when I read these specs, exactly what you're saying. So I'd say modify EJS template for album, right? So I'm giving myself this specific context so that I don't have to think about this later. I know exactly where to go. Modify EJS template for album to add like button, add browser JS to handle fetch, like this kind of thing. So you're being very explicit, which will help you later when you come back. Oh,
I have a question
what's that?
in regards to formatting or file structure. So I know that we added the post into the index, but that should be like its own file eventually, right? Like if you're really doing it the right way and not just the quick way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So.
And if I were in a job interview, I might do it the same way, and I would just say verbally, if I were coming back to refactor this code, I'd break this out into its own file, but for speed purposes, let's just do it here. And that way your interviewer knows that you know to do that.
Okay. What realistically, like, what is the time that we're saving by not pulling it out and following the format that's already created?
I don't know. And if you find that it's helpful to you to pull it out, do it, because it's probably saving 30 seconds or a minute or something like that. And ultimately these interviews aren't coming down to like 1 minute or 30 seconds. It's coming down to usually someone getting stuck on a feature and not knowing how to proceed for 15 or 20 minutes, that kind of thing. So for me, it's less brain energy to just do it in that index file, and I'm used to doing things like that if I'm just kind of hacking something out. But if for you find that it's more energy to put it in there and know that you have to refactor it later and it's bugging you or whatever, by all means, do it however is, kind of simplest for you. That's the thing that I want to get across is like, there's no right or wrong way to do this, but keep it simple for yourself.
Okay. I have kind of a slightly obscure question.
Sure.
Which is like, do you talk to the people who are interviewing us about like whether or not they're actually going to grade us on these things? Because I know that like when I've done interviews with Puneet, he like cares about file structure, and that's like an important piece of it. So I'm wondering
in the
like,
new interview format?
yeah, like I'm just curious because like I know that like this makes sense while we're doing it here, but is it going to transfer over to the interview, or are we actually going to get marked down for that? Because we're working with someone that we haven't been working with until then.
Yeah, I'll make a note to talk with the SCPs about this. My pretty strong sense is that something like putting this in the index file should not result in points docked, because there's nothing in the spec that says like, 40 points, I organized my files in a slick way. And so what that says to me is there's something to at least check on in terms of interview norming, like are we being consistent about that, and I will do that. And if it's not what I think, I'll write to the face and let you know, oh, by the way, we are, of these 35 points, we're saying 5 of these are for, good file structure or something. And actually, probably, I would just have us break that out into an explicit point value, if that was helpful. What's for folks that are still around, what's something that you learned out of this? Something that you're taking away?
What was the other things? Oh, when you're talking about looking at your error stack trace and trying to use that to figure out exactly where you should start by your debugging. That was something that was extremely valuable for the test.
Good. What about Morgan? Is Morgan useful, do you think, as an Express kind of a middleware slash Morgan?
Morgan. So this is the Express middleware that logs whatever requests have been made to your server.
Yeah.
I'd say it's up to you. For a situation like this, like I know when I'm making a request, I'm pretty confident that the server is receiving the request. If I was, if something was really hairy and something wasn't working, I might add it. If I was building an app longer term and I wanted to give myself some infrastructure that might help me debug later, I might do that. For an interview like this, I would, unless there's like a really good reason to do it, I would encourage you to not
stay away from,
not spend the time to add any extra kind of.
Not add anything extra. Just kind of use whatever that basically. So the error, the stack trace that's in the error file there, just use that one basically.
Yeah.
Because usually it will basically, it will like render out the error to the EJS, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only one that's, huh? And in the console as well.
You see the error in the console.
Yeah.
So what else? 1 or 2 more people. What are you taking away? What are you learning?
Just watching how different people approach problems and like hearing how everybody thinks about how they're coding and how they're attacking this is really valuable. Because it's like, oh yeah, maybe that's a quicker way to do that, or maybe that's a more, like an easier way to do that.
Good.
Always valuable for me, it was being here with all the eyes on you. I didn't even realize it was going to. Okay. It's nerve-wracking, man, but it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Starting from the database, from the model, going to the routes to the view. That was also a good advice. I usually start from the view, then I go to the database, then I go to the route.
Yeah, and speaking of that too, maybe like not necessarily go to the command line anymore for like the databases. So if you write a query, just maybe trust that it's going to work somehow. And maybe just like troubleshoot it there instead of like trying to go through the command line and trying to figure out if it works. So, I mean, maybe even Postico or whatnot.
Yeah, you might do this in a project that you're working on right now, or you might take 20 minutes and do this in Postico. Practice writing a SQL query from start to finish without testing it, and make that time you hit execute be the moment of truth. And just practice being precise enough that you've got it on the first try. Not because there's anything wrong with making an error, not because it's going to slow you down a million times, but because that says to me you've got a strong enough grasp of the topic of SQL that you can handle the higher order thing that's going on. That's really what this is about for me. Is like the difference between someone coming from foundations and someone leaving practice to go into apprenticeship is that when you're coming from foundations, your attention is still on how do I write this query? I might need to look up joins. I might need to, whatever. By the time you're getting into an apprenticeship, in order to build an app like this, in order to build a feature like a like button, your attention cannot be caught up with, did I do that SQL query correctly? I need to fix that thing. I need to fix this thing. I need to fix that thing. And then routes, okay, what's the signature for a route when it has a next like this? Just because your attention needs to be on the higher order question of how do I structure this thing so that it works? Does that make sense? Cool. So great work, everybody.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Good luck.
Foods.
What's up?